Good evening. Welcome to tonight's On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers. Tonight's show is 2 hours long and live, so if you have any questions for my guests during the show, text them to 87778 with the word EDGE, a space and then your name, location and your message, and we'll try to pick up on any that really hit the mark. They're all charged at standard rate, so why not get ready to text? One of the joys of hosting a show like this is that we can and do tackle enormously diverse subjects. The only thing that ties them all together is that we give a platform to those who have, for whatever reason, little access to the mainstream media. My show tonight is about the possibility that organic and perhaps even sentient life exists or once existed on Mars. In the images sent from the red planet, maybe we can discern evidence of standing water, vegetation, ruined cities and massive stone artifacts left by ancient civilizations. Given the apparent strength of such evidence, you might reasonably conclude that certain government agencies, particularly but not exclusively those in the USA, have gone to considerable trouble to prevent our access to it. You who watch this show must decide for yourselves. My guest is an analytic chemist and web developer with an inquiring mind. In fact, it is such an inquiring mind that he has spent years studying what evidence is available and has compiled a great many images that seem to have slipped through the cracks in the control machine. As a consequence, he now makes public presentations with titles such as Hyperdimensional Influence on Planetary Geology, the Sidonian Message. He is Anthony Beckett. What a show we've got tonight. Anthony, welcome.
Hi Theo, hi.
It's good to see you.
You too.
So Mars, you've had an interest in Mars for a while.
Yeah, for a few years now, yeah. Yeah, first, I first kind of got interested in astronomy when I was a kid. And, from learning and reading about like the Viking missions from the 1970s when I was at school in the 80s. And then when I went on to uni with all further missions to Mars, and it just kind of fired my imagination, couldn't get enough.
All right, so we've got lots of images to show you tonight, so let's just get into the kind of images of Mars that we all know and love. If we can go to image 1.
There we go. Oh yes. Yeah. Oh, that's gone.
it's still. I think it's still up there.
Yeah, this is a photograph of Mars taken from the Hubble Space Telescope from I forget when. But what it kind of shows is Mars. It contradicts the kind of popular belief that Mars is just the red planet. It's showing like an orangey-based desert region with kind of dark bands and what looks like a greenish, brownish hue. Well, not say green, brown hue on the bottom, the northern regions, and you also see the kind of blue, cloudy sky on the periphery of the sphere. So it's a completely different picture to what I read about as the Mars being the red planet.
Well, it's always known as the red planet, and most of the images we see are red.
That's true. Most of the current ones we see, most of the ones released from the, say, 2004 mission, which Mars Exploration Rover missions, but it wasn't always the case. If you go back to the Viking missions from the 1976, which, if you got the next slide.
Well, the next slide, yes, number 2. Let's say the number 2.
Yeah, this is what the Viking lander took. The first image taken from the Viking lander, which landed on July 1976. It was the first time a lander would actually manage to get a probe onto Mars. We'd had a few flybys in the 60s from the Mariner spacecraft, and Mariner 9 reached orbit, I think, in 1971, and mapped the entire planet. It wasn't until 76, 5 years later, that we actually managed to land a probe on there.
And the Russians hadn't been there?
The Russians attempted a landing but failed. I think it was within the year before.
Okay.
But the Americans were the first to get there. And this one was from Viking Lander 1. There was basically 2 missions. There was Viking 1 and 2. Both had an orbiter and both had a lander. When the first one dropped its lander, which we just saw the image from, the orbiter continued to map the planet and look for somewhere for the second lander to land. But what you saw from that particular image is that it wasn't a particularly red sky. It's kind of got a pinkish hue.
It's quite sort of neutral, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like a realistic. Like you see the American flag, you see the blues and the kind of reds in the flag. And you'll see, it looks like a very kind of realistic looking image. And if you look at the next image, actually, we've got on the thing.
Number 3.
Number 3. We have, from the same lander, we have like basically
There we go.
There it is. So this is it's gone.
No, I think it's there.
there
If you look at that monitor, I think that's the one to look at.
Yeah, it's a typical image from the Viking missions from both landers was basically this kind of terrain. It basically looks like Arizona, but it's actually Mars. You've got the blue sky, you've got the kind of very reddish rocks, which we expect because it's the red planet, and we know that from the Earth-based telescopes you can see that Mars is the red.
Is it because it's rich in iron?
Yeah, it's very rich in iron, and yeah, it's kind of unusual actually because most of the planets that iron is kind of a mineral, a material that you actually normally find in the core of a planet. So Mars is kind of unusual in the sense that its surface is kind of rich in iron.
It's not supposed to have a molten core, is it? Which on Earth is apparently iron. Is that right? Or?
As far as I understand, like geologically, Mars is considered to be geologically dead. It's where we have tectonic plates, we have geological activity. Mars is supposed to be dead.
And it hasn't got any active volcanoes, has it?
Not active volcanoes, but as far as I know, it's supposed to have a core as such, but not an active.
Non-active.
Not active tectonics.
Okay.
But one of the things about Mars is it's called Mars. It's named after the Romans named it Mars, which basically it's associated.
God of War.
Yeah, associated with the God of War.
Yeah.
And if you kind of look up on Wikipedia, it'll say something on the lines of the reason it's considered associated with the war is because it's red and it's blood red. Well, it seems that Mars has experienced extraordinary turmoil in its history. And it could be that it's believed that the reason we have iron-rich deposits on the surface could be that what was once a planet which was induced basically capable of having life forms, much like the Earth, basically suffered some kind of calamity. Maybe it was an meteorite impact, maybe a comet struck somewhere. If somewhere the planet was decimated. So this is the mainstream NASA view actually now, is that Mars used to be capable of supporting life and was basically damaged in some kind of event. And maybe that's why it's referred to as a planet of war. It's a planet of turmoil.
Okay.
So yeah.
So we haven't looked at number 4 yet, have we? Should we have a look at number 4?
Yeah, this is an image again from the Viking missions. I don't know if you can see the top of this. We can't see the top of the image.
No, we're in too close, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, again, what we can see in this is basically looking down at the ground. There's a little canister that's falling off the lander basically as it's landed. Yeah. That's all that is. And at the top of the image, if you might be able to see this on TV, we can't see this, but it's actually got another blue sky. We can't quite see that from this position, from this monitor. Though,
blue sky.
So
all right. Well, let's. So in the early missions, it seemed like the colour was correct.
Yeah. So from 1970s, like from my perspective of being like a school kid in the late 80s, I was reading books with Mars from the Viking missions as having that's what it looked like. It was a blue sky. All the Viking photographs shows Mars with a blue sky.
Okay. So. But then in 1997, the Pathfinder mission.
Yeah, there was another attempt to go back to Mars, actually in 1994, which didn't succeed. It was called the Mars Observer spacecraft. And we'll discuss some more of the details later, I guess. But basically, what you had at the time in 1994 was lots of independent researchers who discovered very interesting things about from the data that was returned from the Viking missions. And they were basically wanting to lobby in Congress to basically change mission priorities for Mars Observer so that they would actually focus more on the kind of controversial areas, which is what we'll look at later as Cydonia. Which people and even NASA employees described as there being a hill that looks like a face on the Cydonia region.
A face on Mars.
So it was basically seen as a potential evidence that is for intelligent life on Mars, on the universe, other than on Earth, which is basically one of the main things that we're actually all fascinated by. Is this all there is, intelligent life-wise? And here was a face in Cydonia looking back up at the camera.
It does.
It's intriguing, to say the least. And what people were trying to do is lobby Congress into getting more information. Mm-hmm. All they needed to do is take some more photographs and to prove once and for all whether it was artificial or not. That's all they were asking. So a guy called Professor Stanley McDaniel wrote basically a peer-reviewed paper based summarising a lot of the research from the independent scientists such as Richard Hoagland, Mike Barra, and Errol Torren. And it was a briefing document for congressmen. Anyway, the report was published at some date in 1994. 3 days later, they lost contact with the probe, and that was 3 days before it was due to go into insertion in orbit around Mars. So, conspiracy theorists kind of say, they pulled the plug.